with his life. But there is no doubt that few presidents left this sort of mark on the White House that Abraham Lincoln did. His impact on the history of America has been immeasurable, and in 1864, when he sought re-election, he did so with the idea that his plans were unfinished. When he was assassinated, his plans for reconciliation between the North and the South were interrupted, and his work was left incomplete. In fact, some would say that it remains incomplete, even today. Perhaps this is why his spirit is so often reported at the White House, and may explain why he is our nation's most famous ghost. Although there are few reports of Lincoln's specter haunting the White House of the late 19th century, there is nothing to suggest that his spirit was not present. In the years following his death, staff members and residents often reported mysterious footsteps in the hallways. However, one of the earliest reliable reports from someone who actually saw Lincoln's apparition came from President Theodore Roosevelt, who took up residence in the house nearly 40 years after Lincoln's death. He said, quote, "I see him in different rooms and in the halls," unquote. In truth, it comes as no surprise that Roosevelt may have attracted the ethereal presence of Lincoln, as he greatly admired the former leader and quoted his speeches and writings often. During the terms of President Calvin Coolidge, his wife Grace actually encountered Lincoln. She said he was dressed in black, with a stole draped over his shoulders to ward off drafts and chills of Washington's night air. She explained that one day, as she passed by the yellow Oval Room, she was startled to see Lincoln staring out the window in the direction of the Potomac, his hands behind his back. Abraham Lincoln turned and looked momentarily in her direction and then vanished. During his tenure at the White House, this room had been Lincoln's library, and he had often stood at the same window, looking out with his thoughts filled with the course of the war. At that same window, Lincoln's spirit has also been seen and felt by others, including the poet and Lincoln biographer Carl Sandburg. He also stated that he felt Lincoln's presence close to him in the yellow Oval Room. President Herbert Hoover also admitted to hearing mysterious sounds in the White House. Although he never acknowledged it was Lincoln's ghost, Hoover left no doubt that he heard something in the darkened corridors that he could not explain. By the time that Franklin Delano Roosevelt began his long series of terms as president, Lincoln had been dead for nearly 70 years. However, his ghost remained, unwilling or unable to leave the White House. During Roosevelt's administration, Lincoln was at his most active, perhaps because of the concerns about the perilous state of the nation during the time of the Great Depression and World War II. Eleanor Roosevelt told reporters that she'd never seen Lincoln, but she admitted she had felt his presence late at night when she used the Lincoln bedroom as a study. She often said that she sensed him standing behind her, peering over her shoulder. She also admitted that she sometimes heard his footsteps in the second-floor hallways. Mrs. Roosevelt also told of an incident that occurred with one of her staff members, Mary Eben. Her secretary had passed the Lincoln bedroom one day and noticed a tall, thin man who was sitting on the edge of the bed, pulling on a pair of boots. She then realized that this figure was Abraham Lincoln. As the late president had been dead for about 75 years at the time, she was understandably frightened and ran screaming back to her office. Mary became just one of the many people who saw Lincoln's ghost during Roosevelt's time at the White House, including the president's valet, who once ran out of the shrinking in fear that he had just seen Abraham Lincoln. Can you imagine? Like, a ghost is a ghost. Like, you see an apparition or whatever, but he is, like, distinctive. I don't think that there's many people in the United States, older people, because I don't think little kids know, but that don't know what he looks like. I can't talk about being a famous ghost. Anyway, okay. In addition to the residents and staff members of the White House, a number of notable visitors also encountered Lincoln during this time. Man, I'd be looking all over. One story relates to Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands, who spent the night in the White House during the war years in exile from the Nazis. It was said she was sleeping in the Rose Room when she heard an insistent tapping on the door. As the hour was quite late, she assumed the summons must be important and quickly opened the door. And there, standing in the doorway, was Abraham Lincoln. According to a White House staff member, the Queen surprised President Franklin D. Roosevelt and a number of cocktail party guests the next evening when she recalled her encounter. She told them that after seeing the apparition, everything went black, and she later woke up on the floor. By this time, the ghost had vanished. The late British Prime Minister Winston Churchill never discussed Lincoln's ghost, but many believe he may have encountered him while visiting the White House. Churchill was always quartered in the Lincoln bedroom during his stays, as were all visiting male heads of state. But the next morning, he would normally be found sleeping in a room across the hall. He confessed he never felt comfortable in that particular room, but he refused to discuss what made him so fearful of it. Of all the presidents who encountered Lincoln's ghost, the best known was President Harry S. Truman, who made no bones about the fact that he believed the White House to be haunted. He once recalled an incident that took place in the early morning hours about 1 year after he took office. He was awakened that night by knocking on his bedroom door. He got out of bed, went to the door, and opened it, but found no one in the hallway. Suddenly, the air around him felt icy cold, but the chill quickly faded as President Truman heard the sound of footsteps moving away from him down the corridor. He later wrote to his wife Bess, who often stayed at their family home in Missouri because she didn't like Washington, and stated that, as I sit in this old house, all the while listening to the ghosts walk up and down the hallway. At 4 o'clock, I was awakened by 3 distinct knocks on my bedroom door. No one was there. Damned place is haunted, sure as shootin'. During his time in office, President Dwight D. Eisenhower made no effort to deny the experiences that he had had with Lincoln's ghost. He told his press secretary, James Haggerty, that he frequently sensed Lincoln's ghost in the White House. One day he explained he was walking down a hallway and the ghost of Abraham Lincoln approached him from the opposite direction. Eisenhower took the encounter in stride, can you imagine? After the horrors of the war, the specter of Lincoln was probably a welcome sight. Surprisingly, Haggerty told of the president's ghostly experience on network television, despite the long-held White House position on a strict no-ghost policy. Jackie Kennedy, who occupied the White House with her family and husband, John F. Kennedy, exactly 100 years after Lincoln lived there, admitted she also sensed Lincoln's presence in the mansion. Although there's no record of President Kennedy ever encountering the ghost, Jackie told reporters in 1961 she found the White House to be cold and drab, and she disliked much of the furnishing. With this in mind, she undertook a major renovation. When she'd completed the widely publicized refurbishment, the White House was freshly painted and redecorated. And this is when Lincoln's ghost began to stir again. Likely, he was unsettled by the massive alterations in the house, and it was during the restoration that Jackie began to encounter his ghost. When he occupied the White House, Lincoln paid little attention to furnishings and was once very angry with Mary when she spent too much money decorating this damned old house. Despite official denials, the members of First families continued to encounter Gerald Ford was in office, his daughter Suzanne publicly acknowledged her belief in ghosts and made it clear she would never sleep in the Lincoln bedroom, or that room as she called it. According to one account, Susan actually witnessed Lincoln's spirit. The late President Ronald Reagan even mentioned Lincoln's ghost in a 1987 press conference. He told reporters that were gathered that he was never frightened by the spirit. He said, "I haven't seen him myself, but every once in a while our little dog, Rex, will start down that long hall, just glaring as though he's seeing something." He also added that the dog would bark repeatedly as he stopped in front of the Lincoln bedroom. Reagan said if he opened the door to the bedroom and tried to get the dog to come inside, Rex would growl fiercely but refuse to step over the threshold. There were no reports of Lincoln's ghost during the Bush administration, and both President and Mrs. Bush denied seeing Lincoln or any other ghosts in the White House. However, during the Clinton years, there were at least 2 sightings of Lincoln's apparition. One encounter was admitted by President Lincoln's brother Roger, who stated he had sensed Lincoln's presence in the White House. The second instance, a Clinton aide admitted he had seen Lincoln walking down a hallway. But the story, which was briefly reported in the news, was quickly denied and dismissed by the White House as a joke. No reports of Lincoln's ghost filtered out of the White House during the tenancy of President George W. Bush, but no one knows what stories will be told in the years to come. Does the ghost of Abraham Lincoln really walk in the White House? Some of our country's most influential leaders have certainly believed so. But why does he still walk here? Is the apparition merely a faded memory of another time, or an actual presence? Does the ghost appear, as been suggested, during times of crisis, when perhaps the assistant of the president who faced America's greatest crisis is most needed? President Harry Truman had no idea why Lincoln's ghost was still present in the White House. In her biography about the president, Margaret Truman stated that her father certainly had no ambitions to haunt the White House himself. "No man in his right mind would want to come here of his own accord," he said. So, I know that that's not a terribly long video, but I find things like that so interesting. And if you're a person like me who has no hardship in believing that people saw the same ghost over and over and over, you do have to wonder, why is he still there? And again, as Troy said, is he just something that's just reliving the same strides down the hallway, or is he there lingering, watching, making his presence known when people need assistance? I've never really thought about whether or not, and I guess Troy Taylor has, and obviously he's a paranormal researcher, so he probably has put way more thought in it than I have. But I never really differentiated between the type of ghost that does the same thing over and over and over, or the type of ghost that, kind of changes what they do and appears where they want, when they want to, whomever they want, the kind that mess with you or move things or, things like that. I never really thought about that there were 2 potential different types of ghosts. I'm sure there's like a technical name for it, but again, don't ask your girl, because I never thought about it at all. I don't really know what I think. I do think that his death is one of the more unsettling, not the most, I don't know who would be the most, but unsettling assassinations. Any assassination is unsettling, but deaths, we had this whole long talk not terribly long ago about JFK and Jackie and the conspiracies around it, and the Secret Service agent that shoved himself on top of the car so he could protect the back of Jackie Kennedy. But we've never really talked about Abraham Lincoln. I think that it is terrible that, you know, he was shot in front of his family members, and then he wasn't immediately passed, and they moved him, and he had to suffer for goodness knows how long. And you know, in this day and age, what's to say they couldn't have gone in and retrieved that bullet and he would have lived? I am a huge, fun fact, if you don't know, Hannah, you'll definitely have to tell me down below if you knew this, because it seems to be that you know so much about me. I quizzed her the other day. I love the TV show Scandal, and I have a heartfelt crush on Tony Goldwyn, who probably is old enough to be my dad, but the man is beautiful. And he is the president on that show. Apparently, he was not supposed to be like a recurring character, but the chemistry between him and Kerry Washington, who plays Olivia Pope, who's like a fixer in Hollywood, was so like lit and like viable almost that they continued to have him on the show. But some of my favorite moments are in the White House, in the room that looks like the Oval Office and things like that, which I said, I'm not a political person. I don't know anything about the paintings at the White House or anything like that. But it was kind of neat to see it from that aspect and to think about all that goes into campaigning and the sacrifices you have to make for your family to be the president. And even then, like, you don't have the freedom that you think you have. Like, Tony, who plays President Fitzgerald Grant III, they call him Fitz, he's like, how do I get out of here? You can't tell me that Clinton never escaped. Like, how do I get out of here? And he was like bargaining with the Secret Service, and I can't imagine being in that type of situation where if I want to go get a soda or some ice cream or something, I have to arrange like 10 cars and an ambulance and like all that stuff. That's crazy to me. I got off track. I was leading somewhere with that. I do that. There's a scene in there where there is an assassination attempt, and I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but it was horrifying because obviously it, just like in a real life situation, it comes out of left field. You're not expecting it. You're not expecting the sounds, the havoc that wreaks, you know, like among the people around. I can't imagine being in any type of situation like that. I am the type of person that keeps my cool under stress. However, that is just completely frightening to even think about. I do have to wonder if there are other ghosts or ghostly presences in the White House. I myself would find it quite strange that Mr. Lincoln would be the only one. I mean, I kind of believe that ghosts have some sort of unfinished business, and, you know, that would make sense to me why Lincoln was still hanging around. I don't think I could predominantly have an answer as to who else I would think had unfinished presidential business and would not be, or would be lingering around the White House. Of course, the only other one I think of is JFK, so that's where that came from. But anyway, thank you guys so much for being here and supporting me here on my channel. If you would like other history videos like the JFK assassination and the conspiracies surrounding it, or anything else that you would like to see, not just in the month of October, but any other time, please leave your comments down below. I am constantly looking for ideas to give you guys new content that you will enjoy. I do try a lot of it out on Patreon, and sometimes it's a fail, and sometimes it's a win, and then you guys get to see it. I did have one kind of fail on there, but I'm still gonna do it here on the channel because I purchased a thing specifically for it. spooky